Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Alexis and today I'm going to be sharing what I read for the month of November and December of 2021. I realize we're already a week into the new year, but I thought it would only be fair to compile all my notes of what I wanted to share into a singular document before sitting down and doing this. The first book I'll be talking about is still by Kennedy Ryan. So it is written in first person, dual perspective. We get to see the side of Grip and Bristol, and that's our leading pair. This is the third book in her Grip trilogy, and the first one, Flow, follows their first meeting and fallout. The second book, Grip, we see them years later into their friendship, them seeing other people before finally coming together and having to deal with the judgment of their close relations and coming to terms with that together. And still follows the aftermath, of course, of Grip, but also their first encounters, moving in together, moving away, having to navigate their music industry because Grip is a known singer and rapper, and Bristol is his manager, as well as other artists within their industry. But this does end up packing quite a punch. I will say there was more pain before pleasure because it does feature, aside from the bigotry and mild violence because of the bigotry, there's loss of a child in here, and that does get pretty heavy. So, like I said, this goes years into their relationship. Aside from moving in together, a happy engagement, happy for first year and into that for their marriage. But then there's some complications with their child, and this does show them navigating that and having to deal with the grief together and endure it together. So that's what made it a beautiful story for me. Again, very emotional. It took me a month and a half to get through because of this book, because of what they were going through. I had to put it down, but I knew I had to continue as well because I wanted to see how they were going to be able to work it out. Some of my favorite moments for this story include Bristol deciding to support Grip, of course, and move with him across the country so he can pursue further education. I enjoyed Grip defending their relationship to his role model. I also enjoyed the subplot of his professor Izzy and his TA acknowledging the attraction that somewhat forbidden. I wouldn't mind a story by Kennedy Ryan about them, about Izzy and Callie, but I digress. I am pretty sure there's not one out, and she hasn't announced any plans to write their story, but if she ever does, I certainly will pick it up. There's also having to deal with their past or exes, their first anniversary, very cute, and the meaning of tattoos in here is present, poetry, just a very telling story in here of how a couple can overcome that form of grief and, through thick and thin, going through those trials together. So, very beautiful conclusion to a very beautiful series. The next story, Truth or Dare, by Daniel Allen, is a contemporary romance novella. This is my first read by Daniel Allen. It is a first person, singular perspective. It's between Simone and Kingston. This is only from Simone's point of view. And essentially, they met in college. They were within the same group of friends that often used Truth or Dare as a pastime. Nothing happens in college, but then years later, when two of their friends from the same group, of course, kept in touch, they plan a destination wedding, and that is where Kingston and Simone meet up again. Of course, there's an attraction there. Things happen always at a wedding, and we get to see, friends to lovers. There's some mild drama in the peripheral area, cheating, again, peripheral, and a beautiful wedding getaway. So it's a cute little story. Some of my favorite moments include their meeting again at the destination wedding, some poolside conversation and flirtation. There's the visiting of each other's room. I'm not going to say who because it gets a little spicy in there, of course, and their airport departure. I'm not going to say what happens more because, again, it is a little novella and you want to save some of the plot for yourself. So, all in all, I gave this 4 stars. The next one is the only book that I decided to get for the holiday season, and that would be You Make It Feel Like Christmas by Donna Hill and Frances Ray. This technically consists of 2 stories. The first one, I would say it's about 2/3, and the second one, of course, the 1/3 remaining. So the first story, titled Rockin' Around That Christmas Tree, is by both authors, and that is written in third person. It is a contemporary romance, of course, holiday themes, somewhat second chance because it's, within a marriage and having to see the 2 partners learn to, fall in love again or, court each other again in the way that the other wants. This does also include some quirky extended family, storm, and lighthearted drama. I will say that it has Hallmark vibes, just as the second story does. Both have, the cheesy elements of a Hallmark movie, but maybe some mild drama. The first one talks about Denise and Edward. So Denise is a housewife and she's tired of feeling like she's not needed by her family for advice or things like that. They only come to her for housework, whether it be sewing, dishes, the cleaning, all that. And to shake things up, she decides to tell her husband Edward, of 27 years, that she wants a divorce. Now, he's determined not to lose her, so of course, Edward works on winning her back during the holiday season. Denise essentially announced it to the rest of the family around Thanksgiving, so Edward has until Christmas to change her mind. But of course, Denise never actually wanted a divorce. She just wanted to push Edward to see her reason for wanting more and wanting to feel more independent and needed and loved. For him, it was always Denise, and for her, it was always Edward. So, again, very cute story. The next one, The Wish by Frances Ray, is about Nicholas Darling. So it starts off with him and his brother at a local grocery store shopping for Thanksgiving groceries. But in conversation, Nicholas says that he wants to find love or something along those lines. And an elderly woman overhears him and decides to grant his wish. Although he doesn't believe in magic or anything, Christmas magic or any magic at all, Nick decides to, just say thank you. But in doing so, he agrees to accept the wish. And maybe a few days later at work, women start to flock to him. And he knows it's because of the wish, and everyone has an understanding about the elderly woman's reputation of granting wishes and people finding their happiness or sadness because of said wishes. So he decides to confront her at her own house, and the person who opens the door is Andrea. That is the elderly lady's niece. So this is their love story. I will say it's pretty predictable. So mild magic moments. Again, I consider this on a Hallmark scale. The first story is more intriguing than the second one. I wasn't as invested in the wish, but all in all, because they're paired together, I gave it 3 stars. Now, the next one is a novella that I found on Kindle, so one moment as I get that ready as well. Okay, so the next story that I wanted to share that I read would be Hints of Spice by Christina C. Jones. This is a little novella that I read. It is in first person dual perspective between Cinnamon, yes, her name's Cinnamon, Sin for short, and Landry. So Cinnamon moves into town with her daughter and her mother. So as they're getting acquainted, of course, they're getting some housework done. And Landry happens to be one of the people working, and he is part of the family owned company. So they meet at her house as he's working there. And of course, there's this immediate attraction, some cute moments with Cinnamon, being too stunned to speak because of Landry's beauty. There are some playful moments with her daughter, nicknamed Nutmeg, which is really cute. And then her mother, Sage, can be somewhat interfering but matchmaking. So I thought that was very fun as well. I will say that this is, of course, contemporary romance. There is some mention of exotic history and some annoying siblings on Landry's part, as well as a creative, crazy, and manipulative non ex. I mean to say that because one of them has someone kind of pushed into their arms, kind of, but they don't feel a mutual attraction, but they kind of always just assumed that they were going to be inevitable. So it's a person you haven't dated, but has the qualities of a crazy ex. So do that with what you will. I did end up giving this 5 stars because I really enjoyed Landry and Cinnamon's development, although it just shows them just starting out. But again, very cute, and it's just like Cinnamon. So sweet and spicy at the same time. Now, the next one is another novella, and one moment as I get a hold of that as well. Okay, so the next one is titled Dipped in Holly by Dana Isali, I believe. And this is, of course, a cute little holiday novella that is contemporary. It does feature breakup, one night stand, turned morning, happy for now. There is some daddy kink and light BDSM, I should say. This is my first exposure, I'd say, to BDSM. I personally don't have a full understanding of that, but I'm hoping to become more knowledgeable as time goes on and I get more exposed to that type of writing. So this follows Holly, and Holly, dressed in a sexy Santa costume, gets dumped at a bar by her sleazy ex who had been cheating on her. So when she's crying in the bathroom, Nicholas, the bar owner, ends up knocking on her door, insisting that she come out of the restroom. But of course, there's this immediate attraction, and he makes it up to her by sharing a drink. They spend the night. He does, throw out her ex, so that was interesting. They do spend the night together, and then it follows them into the next morning. I did hear that this is supposed to be extended to a full book, but I haven't heard more about that. Again, this is a novella that just came out in 2021, so that is pretty cute. Aside from that, I will say that it was not wasted at all. There was no wasted space. I wouldn't mind getting a hold of this hard copy myself because, again, I had access to this on Kindle, and I will rate this 5 out of 5 stars. Now, the next one is another novella. It's a quarantine novella. One moment as I get a hold of that one as well so I can show you what it looks like. All right, so the next story is by Nicole Falls, titled Love Under Quarantine. Now, this was part of a series collaboration with other authors. I found out while I was reading that, in fact, it is the 8th in the series, but this was the only one I had a hold of. Plus, I thought it was interesting to see something that features the quarantine and how it would be approached here. This is in first person perspective. We get to see a little bit of both parties, and that'll be between Jules and Jenkins. They are crew members on a cruise, and after a few months of kind of friends with benefits, Jules wants to see about trying something more, but she doesn't know how to approach the conversation with Jenkins. So this is that, and upon their return, they're supposed to be quarantined for 2 weeks, and over those 2 weeks, this is them trying to figure out how to continue their relationship if they are to do so. And of course, it's happily ever after, or happy for now, a story. Some of my favorite moments include the fact that there are Gen Z elements in here, or memes mentioned, meme references, and lingo. That was entertaining. Jules did get a little bit annoying because she tries to ghost Jenkins, thinking that it's going to end, even though she doesn't want it to. She doesn't want to get attached. There's also her sister Odette, which was funny. Jenkins being, the type of person who's willing to wait it out, and it was just swoon worthy. Also, the conclusion on introducing him to her family, and again, very beautiful story. Again, I kind of wish I read the previous book so I could get a better understanding of the side characters in here, but I will say it's 4 out of 5 stars in my opinion. Now, after that, I did read another Kindle story. So the next story I'm referring to is titled Seducing a Stranger by Kerrigan Byrne, and this is formally called A Dark and Stormy Night. It's considered the 7th book in the Victorian Rebels series, but it's the first book of the Good Girls series. Good spelled Goode, as in the last name. So this is a historical romance told in third person. It does follow a one night stand trope, surprise pregnancy, some betrayal, distrust, kidnapping, danger, mystery crime elements, of course, friendly banter, and their shared history. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. This is my first by Kerrigan Byrne. I did hear a little bit about her on a couple other channels, but I wanted to give her a shot, and after this, I think she might be my go-to for romantic suspense among a couple others. But yes, so this follows Chief Inspector Carlton Morley. He is the lead crime and justice inspector, and he doesn't see himself, pursuing anything further in his lonely life. He doesn't know what else there is for him to do. But then he meets Prudence Good on a night when he's working on a case, and they meet in a garden designated for seduction. So I thought that was pretty intriguing to already start there. And because they, engaged in relations that one night, 3 months later, we have Carlton at a wedding, and he doesn't know who it's for, but he gets called to the back because apparently there had been a murder, and lo and behold, it's Prudence Good. She's the bride, holding the groom in her arms, dead. He was murdered on their wedding day, and he learns from there that she's pregnant, and then they have to figure out what to do from there because, he suspects Prudence. Of course, she's the prime suspect because she was found at the scene. But we get to see them, evolve as a young couple, what Carlton decides to do to protect her. You can already kind of assume what he, does to protect her from any, potential gossip, but eventually comes back. And I will say it does pique my interest for both other series. So who knows? I don't know when I'm gonna get a hold of the prequels and the sequels, but I am almost positive that I'm going to try to get them within a couple weeks, even though I'm trying to tell myself to hold off on buying things because I have a lot of other books, and I will be sharing my hard copy books that I haven't read yet in another video, in a later video. So I'm trying to, suppress the urge to shop for more. But again, my favorite moments within Seducing a Stranger include their first meeting in that garden, the wedding day, the side characters with Carlton, who would be the other heroes from the other stories. You'll have to read it. Again, this one can be read as a standalone. I was able to with no trouble. You can read the others in the series as well. I also enjoyed, Carlton coming to Prudence when there was a fall, a little incident. He's always really endearing. He does do some things to prepare for the pregnancy and coming baby, so I thought those were really sweet as well. Prue, she does feel some loneliness because, of course, her reputation is tainted by the crime on her wedding day, as well as the quick and swift marriage. So, marriage of convenience in this as well. I thought it was cute to see Carlton evolve with his feelings for Prue, and I appreciated the saving grace at the end. That's all. That's all. But I do suspect that the next story about her sister Honoria is going to be intriguing as well, because I did read the chapter preview at the very end, and it already has my interest. So that should be interesting, because Honoria wasn't the best sister in this story, so it would be nice to see how she evolves in that one. It looks like it's going to be class difference, friends to lovers trope. So yeah, we'll see about that. The next one, The Deal by L. Kennedy, and yes, I caved. This is something that's, I think, it blew up this year, but it was already pretty well known before then. I wasn't aware of it because I kind of was late on the romance train. But yes, I read this one, and this is a first person dual perspective story about Hannah and Garrett. Garrett is the team captain for his college hockey team, and he starts to have trouble in school, so he seeks tutoring help from Hannah. Hannah initially refuses, but then Garrett offers to help her get noticed by the guy she likes. So this is fake dating, somewhat strangers to friends to lovers. There's also some elements of different cliques, so kind of different classes as well. Um, Garrett comes from a well-off family, or at least money-wise well-off family. Hannah comes from suburban family, lower class. She does experience some troubling history. They have not shared trauma, but they have their own separate trauma that they help each other get through. One of them rape history, the other one parental abuse. Have to read to see how they unpack those. I really enjoyed the fact that they were able to help each other, get through or move past their initial hesitation for each other. I enjoyed the fact that Garrett and his friends were kind of viewed some way, but then as Hannah comes to know them, she starts to see the good in them as well. I enjoyed some favorite elements of Garrett being impressed by Hannah, being able to succeed in a class that most of them weren't able to, um, succeed in. I also enjoyed the initial deal between them. They did end up binge watching TV together, a show and overnight. There's also Hannah singing to Garrett, kissing practice. Um, Hannah drunk one night and Garrett her bodyguard. Let's see, Garrett seeking advice for Hannah and how to move forward with that. Garrett helping Hannah realize she's not broken. Baby steps. If you read the story, you'll know what I mean. Baby steps. Of course, their first time, Garrett falling first, and then they finally decide to go out together. I also enjoyed that Garrett would defend Hannah from people who were trying to judge her from her past because of her history. Again, you have to read it to fully understand what I mean. There's also Hannah going home with Garrett to help him deal with the family estrangement issues. But all in all, I did give this 4 stars. There were a couple instances where I felt they were acting more like high schoolers than college students. But again, still a solid read. I'm not sure if I'm interested enough to continue the series. I heard mixed things about the rest of them, but the deal is something I wanted to deal with. So I'm glad I was able to get a hold of it. And then lastly, that would be for 2021, Lisa Kleypa's Stranger in My Arms. Now, this one, I'm not sure how I feel about it. Um, it is, of course, first person perspective, or excuse me, third person perspective. And this is a historical romance, second chance, maybe. Uh, there's also false identity, or maybe, is it? There's some domestic abuse with side characters, violence, and death. I will say that this is about Lara, and she is a widow whose husband was assumed dead for about a couple years, but then a man returns home to her who looks so much like the man she married but doesn't act like him. And it's a question of whether he is changed or if he's an imposter. You have to read it to find out. And I will say I kept going back and forth between those 2 options. Is he the man she married, or is it someone else? How is that so? Da 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 da. Now, what I enjoyed, I will say, I enjoyed the idea of the plot. I thought that would be an interesting concept for either route, whether it was the fact that he was an imposter or it was the fact that it was the man she married and he was morally changed. But I did feel like there was something left to be desired in here. And some of the pages did drag out for me. I noticed that there are some characters I didn't care to read about. I wanted more between Hunter, that's her husband, and Lara. I was annoyed with both of them at one point or another more than once for the lack of communication, especially if they're married. I don't understand why they wouldn't communicate more if things are already improving. But then there was this moment, maybe a quarter left into the book, or a quarter left of the book, that the Dowager Countess, or supposed Dowager Countess, she returns and she posed interesting questions that I thought were something I'd like to share. So it was a question of truth, and if the truth is essential to follow with or to maintain a lie. Again, you'd have to read it to understand what I'm alluding to, but I will say it did leave something to be desired for me. A question of fate and choice. I cannot fully support or deny this love pairing because, again, they didn't know each other well enough the first time. But then the second time, there's still not full honesty even between the couple, whether it be to the public or between them. There's still secrets. And favorite moments include Hunter's return, Hunter dismissing his aunt and uncle who would have inherited the property and everything related to the title when he dismissed them from the premises. I enjoyed Johnny's character as a little boy that Lara meets in the orphanage and starts to take care of him. I also enjoyed the fact that Hunter was always, careful around Laura. He never wanted to hurt her, even if it was on accident. Um, but nothing happens. But he was just worried that he could have in a a less state of mind, and you know something happens to him. I will say that considering how it was the first round of their marriage, Hunter only married her for convenience. It was to give birth to an heir, but Laura didn't conceive, and it was assumed that it was on her. But of course, later on, find out that she wasn't the one with the problem. That's all I'm gonna say. And of course, it's not a choice, but I mean, it wasn't her body that was rejecting it. That's all I'm gonna say. But all in all, I did give this 3 stars because it did leave something to be desired in here. And that is how I ended 2021. And that concludes my reads for November and December of 2021. I hope you enjoyed it. I do intend on following this format in the future as well, sharing the name of the book, the title, if it comes in a series or if it's standalone, maybe any common trigger warnings or tropes that are featured, some favorite moments that I enjoyed, and my rating. So until next time, again, my name's Alexis, and take care.